So now I'm inside a practice folder inside my C drive. So I created a new folder called practice inside my C drive. Okay, and inside here I will do show more options. Right click, show more options, and you should see this one. Open Git Bash here. Since we downloaded Git Bash earlier, right? So if you click on open Git Bash here, it should open a terminal for you. Okay, this is called the CLI or command line interface. Now this is how we use Git. Okay, and if you go to your remote repository on the browser, you should see this quick setup. You can either set up using GitHub Desktop, which is the GUI, or you can set up using HTTPS using the CLI. Okay, now if you copy this link to clone, there should be a button to copy. Okay, now go back to your CLI, git bash CLI, and you should type git clone and paste the link. Now it says you have cloned an empty repository because on our remote repository we do not have any files yet, right? This is an empty repository and this is what we cloned right now. Okay, now if we do an ls, which stands for list, you see that this has been cloned, and you should also see here this folder has been created, right? We didn't create this folder, we just cloned it from our remote. All right, now there is another command called cd, which stands for change directory, and you'll have to specify the name of the directory. Now if you cd into git practice, you will move into git practice. As you can see, earlier you were inside practice, now you are inside git practice, right? Now if you do ls, there is nothing here. You don't see anything, right? Because we do not have anything on the repository yet. Okay, I hope that makes sense. And you see main here, right? This is just the main branch. Okay, now let's create a file inside our git practice. Now you can think of this CLI as a tool that is tracking changes in our repository. Now this is our remote repository or the working directory, right? And this is our remote repository. This is our local repository, and the one on the browser is our remote repository. Okay, now I will show you how Git tracks changes in our local and our remote. So if you create a new file here, let's create a text document. Okay, I will call it test file dot txt. The .txt is called a file extension. We'll create a new test file .txt. Now let's open it. Now I have opened test file.txt. Okay, and I will make some new changes. This file is created on my local machine. All right, I will save it and then I will close it. Now I will show you the git magic. Okay, if you right click on your local repository now and then go to git bash, earlier when we did ls we didn't see anything, right? Actually, let me go here. You can see when we did ls there was nothing here. Now when we do ls, you see that the test file .txt, I don't know why is there two txts. Let me change this one. I think the extension has already been provided. Okay, now if I do ls, you can see test file.txt file is created here, right? But on your remote repository this file is not present yet. Okay, so why is that happening? Because you have not committed or pushed your changes yet. All right, now let's commit this file. We need to remember these commands. Okay, now we will do git commit. No, first we need to add the file, right? There are two areas called the staging area. There is one area, sorry, the staging area, and we need to add it to the staging area first. Okay, now the command is git add and the file name. Now I will type the file name testfile.txt, right? Now git will add this file into our staging area. So whenever you make any changes in the local here, whenever you make any changes in the local here, you need to add those changes into the staging area using git add command, right? So that's what we did earlier. Now our changes are in the staging area, but we need to push those changes onto the remote, right? Now I will show you the workflow how to commit and push into remote. Okay, now the first thing we need to do is we need to do git commit, and the -m flag is for message. Now the message needs to be very clear and descriptive. Okay, we will do this, create test file. This is what we did, right? So we will do this git commit. You can see one file changed. Now we need to do a git push. When you do git push, right now you can see there is no files in our remote, right? We just committed it, and you know what committing means, right? Committing means we are putting it in the staging area. Now after we do a git push, we can see that it will be pushed onto the remote repository. So now let's go back and see if that is working. Should work actually. Git push. Okay, you can see from main to main. What is main here? Main is the local repository, which is this one. This is the local repo. We made a change, right? Created a new file, added it into the staging area using git add, and now we are pushing it onto the. We committed it with a message. Where is our message here? Git commit message create test file, right? And then we pushed it. So let's see if this is on our remote repository yet or not. Okay, I'm reloading it, and now you can see the test file has been pushed onto the remote, right? You didn't copy it or you didn't push it or anything. I mean, you didn't upload it here, right? But it is present here. Now let's open it and we will see. You can see here this file is created on my local machine, but now this is on the remote repository, right? Okay, so this is how you use the git CLI to see. You can use ls to list the file. You can use cd to change your directory. A directory is just a folder, right? And you can use git status to see the branch that you are on. You are on the main branch. There is no changes to commit yet. I can show you one thing. If we make any changes, then how git will track it, right? This is a new change. If we make a change and save it, now if I go to my CLI, earlier it says nothing to commit, the tree is clean, right? Now if I do a git status, you can see this file has been modified. Now you remember, right? If you change something on your local, you need to save it and add it to the staging area. Now git add test file.txt. If you do the tab, it will do the autofill for you. Okay, test file.txt. I did a tab here. Now this file is being tracked now. Okay, now if I do git commit -m, made a change in local is the message that I'm giving. And if you do a git push, these changes should be pushed onto the remote repository now. Okay, So if I go into my file, you can see this is a new change on line 3. That is how Git tracks the changes. All right. We can also see a demo of the Git pull if you want. This is a remote repository. Now I'm trying to make a change on remote. This is a remote change. And if I commit my changes, I need to message, right? I need a good commit message like I told you earlier. Let's see. Mm, change made in remote. Now I'm committing on the remote. So if I go to my git terminal, as you know, this tracks changes, right? Now if I do git status, um, now we made a change on the remote, but this is not yet here on our local file, right? So how do I bring the changes from remote onto our local? We need to do a git pull, right? As you can see on the diagram, this is the remote. This is the remote, right? Now if there are any changes here, how does my local repository know about those changes? We need to do a git pull to pull those changes onto the local repository, right? Now let's go back and do this. So I can do git pull, but what do I know? How do I know to tell it to pull it from the remote now? Okay, so that is an important thing. So going back to our presentation earlier, you can see our remote repository is also known as the origin, right? So we'll have to pull from the origin. Okay, we need to do a git pull from origin. Now we will do git pull origin. Now it says it has pulled successfully, right? You can read the message here. From we pulled into main from origin main. Now let's open the file and see if the changes are reflecting. You can see here that the remote change has been pulled onto our local repository here because we made this change on the remote, right? This is how Git tracks the changes, and this is how pulling and pushing works. Okay, so let's recap here. If you make any changes on local, you need to add it to the staging area, which is this one, and you need to commit and then push, right? You need to commit and then push. And the next thing is, if there are any changes on the remote, then you'll have to pull it. You'll have to pull it in order for the change to take effect. Okay, as you can see here, you'll have to pull it, and we did a demo on that, right? So let's move on with our presentation. So how does Git track the changes? That is a very good question. It checks the line number to figure out if any change has been made on the local and the remote. Okay, so here you can see there was a change on line number 5. So when we did a git pull origin, it pulled line number 5 onto our local. Okay, that's how it knows. It doesn't know about anything else. It only checks for lines, and if any line is changed, then it will recognize that change and pull it onto our machine. Okay, another important thing is the file extension. Always check your file extensions to make sure that your code is working well. Some common extensions are .txt for text file, .java for uh, Java file, right? .tex for the latex files, I think. I'm not sure on that one. But .py for Python and .md for Markdown, okay? Markdown is a simplest form of documentation language. It is used a lot with Git as well. And you can see we have a readme here, right? If you create a readme.md file, which is a markdown file, it can be used for documentation as well. Readme.md is a common file on Git. Okay, so let's move on. installing git and git bash, we just did that, right? You just have to go to the link and download it. CD stands for change directory. Directory is nothing but a folder. If you do a CD, you can change between folders, and you can use ls. Ls stands for list. If you use a dash a flag with ls, you can see the hidden files as well. Okay, now let's take a look at that. I'm doing clear to clear my screen. If I do a ls, all I can see is testfile.txt here, right? But there are other files in my repo as well. I don't know if you noticed that or not. You can see there is a .git file, right? But when I do ls, this file does not show up. So how do I make this file show up when I do an ls? You need to do a ls-a, which stands for all, and it shows other files as well. Okay, there is a .git directory. When you see a slash here, that means it's a directory. Okay, and this is a file because it does not have a slash. Okay, now let's move on. There is a GUI application for Git as well, which is known as GitHub Desktop. You can use that GitHub Desktop as well instead of using the CLI, which is this one. This is the command line interface, right? But there are differences in using GUI or CLI. GUI is easy to use, but CLI is more flexible because if you know some common Linux commands, you can easily use the CLI to make changes to your repository. Okay, you can download the GitHub Desktop and play with it. It's super easy. I can make a video sometimes to show you how to do that as well. Now let's move on. Now the .gitignore file. Okay, what is the .gitignore file? If you go to your local repository, let's say you created a file, all right, and we can name it password. You can store password to connection string to your database and stuff like that. All right, I will say connection. I'm opening this file here. Connection key, let's call it. This is a key. Okay, just imagine that you need this file to connect to the database. Okay, your application needs this connection file in order to connect to the database, and we do not want to push this file into our remote repository because it contains a password, right? Let's say you do not want to push it into your remote, then how do you do that? There comes the gitignore file. Okay, now if you do a git status here, you can see git is tracking this file as well, right? Connection.txt. But if you do not want git to track this file, you will have to create a gitignore file and put the name of this file inside gitignore so that git will ignore this file now. Okay, so now I'm going to open my repository in VS Code. If you don't have VS Code, you can install it. It's super easy. Just search for VS Code for Windows and you can install it. All right. If you guys have any issues installing VS Code, you can ask me and I can make a video or I can help you how to do that. Okay. I have already installed it and I can open it from here using code dot space dot, which stands for this directory. Okay, now it will take me a second here and this repository will open in VS Code. As you can see here, this is the connection file we made, this is the text file we made, right? Now I am going to create a git ignore file dot git ignore. Okay, this is a special file in git and you can see the icon here. So if you put any file in here, git will not track it. Okay, so let's do this. Connection.txt. I'm saving it. All right, now let's go back into our git bash terminal and look at the git status. Earlier when we did a git status, it was showing that this file is modified, right? Now if I do a git status, you can see it is no longer tracking this file. It only knows about the git ignore file here now. So this file is has been ignored. Okay, even if you make any changes on this file on the local, it will not git will not track it. And if you commit or push, it will not be present on your remote repository. Now let's try that. If you do a git commit, now I'm saying db connection for database connection because we did that on the local, right? But it is not present on the, it is not being tracked. We will see a demo of this right now. Now if you do a git push, everything is up to date. Oh, because I forgot to add this file. Okay, we need to add it first into the staging area. Git add. I'm doing, if I do a tab, it will autofill. Git ignore. This file has been added. Git commit. Sorry, I want to use the earlier message. If I do an up arrow, we can use the previous commands, right? So git commit with a message db connection. Okay, now git push. This is being pushed now. Okay, now let's take a look at the remote repository. Let's reload it, and you can see there is the git ignore file, but the local file, which is the connection file, is not present. Okay, so how did that happen? We git should track all the changes, right? Right, but it is not tracking one specific file, which is the connection.txt. Why is it not tracking it? Because this file is inside the name of this file is inside the git ignore file, right? So now git will not track this file because it the name of this file is here and it will not track it. So what is the benefit of doing that? Okay, benefit is this repository sometimes is accessible to other people, right? And you do not want your secret informations to be displayed to other people. So if someone is trying to clone this repository, then how do they know that they need a connection file in their local machine to for this project to run, right? So that's a good question. Now if they clone this repository to work on their machine, they will have to look inside the .gitignore file to get an idea of what is needed to run this project properly. Okay, as you can see, a connection.txt file is needed. So they will have to create this file after cloning. When they clone into their machines, this file will not be present. Okay, so they will take a look inside the gitignore file and create this file for the project to work as expected. All right.